Sometimes you've only just started an army, so you only have maybe 500 to 1,000 points. And sometimes you are new to the game, and you don't want to be overwhelmed with a ton of rules, too many models, a huge board. And honestly, sometimes you just don't have the energy to run a full 2,000 point game. You want something a little bit more chill and a little bit more tactical. Incursion is a really fun format that encourages tight, purposeful armies and really focused list building. In this video, I'm going to talk about making a Grey Knights list in incursion-sized 1,000 point games of Warhammer 40,000.
Incursion games are awesome. We started playing them recently on my channel, and 1,000 points is so much more manageable than 2,000. There's nothing wrong with a good Strike Force size game. They're a lot of fun. I love seeing tanks, I love seeing fields of soldiers, but 1,000 points scratches a certain itch. It can be done in almost half the time, so you're not tired by the end of it. I know there have been many 40k games that have taken 5 or 6 hours for me, and I have a great time with them, but I'm just exhausted by the end of it. 1,000 point games are bigger than like a kill team or even like a combat patrol, where you just don't really feel like you're getting your faction's representation on the field. So they're big, but they're not so big that you're just feeling overwhelmed. Especially for newer players, 1,000 point games are fantastic because you can field a lot of units and still get a good feel for the army that you want to play, but you're not overwhelmed by the sheer number of possibilities in the game. And primarily, you are not overwhelmed by your opponent. There have been so many 2,000 point games where I have just been destroyed turn one, or lost, not even entirely destroyed, but lost 500-600 points. And then it's just all uphill from there. But it's all uphill from there? Huh, interesting. You say it's all downhill when it's getting worse, but you say it's an uphill struggle if it's harder. So it is all uphill because it's an uphill struggle, but the situation is going downhill. That's an interesting little... Anyway, that's something to ponder later. But I'm going to talk in this video about what I have learned from my incursion games that I've been doing and how I make a 1,000 point Grey Knight list. A couple books here that are necessary. Unfortunately, we still need this one because we haven't gotten our new codex yet. Maybe on the horizon though. I saw that teaser. Did you? It'd be really cool if we got that updated soon. So, for all I know, this information is going to be out of date in just a couple of months, and then I'll have to make another one of these. But for now, we're going to be operating off of Codex and Ritual of Daemon. Wow, this book is small. I hadn't even... This is the Space Marines Codex from 9th edition. This is the Grey Knights Codex from last edition. God! I'm excited for ours. It's going to be great. Anyway, 1,000 point games for Grey Knights. Grey Knights are a very expensive faction, which I'm sure you know. Our basic troops, Terminators. I don't run strike squads. That's a personal philosophy of mine. Strike squads feel bad to play. They have 1 wound and a 3-up save, and an ancient demon-killing warrior should not be that weak. So, personal philosophy, I only run Terminator squads as my troops. What this means is my troops are currently, and this could be out of date in a couple weeks when the new Munitorum field manual comes out, but currently my troops are 38 points a model. What that means is in a 1,000 point game, each of my troops, each just individual model, is about 4% of my whole force. So a single bad roll on a multi-damage weapon means I'm losing a significant chunk of my army. And that's really the main thing to consider when making a Grey Knights list at 1,000 points. Every single loss is going to hurt. So you have to really, really think about what you're putting on the table, what you can defend, and what you can keep there. It's a common strategy in Grey Knights list building to just fill the list with characters, because the discipline from Ritual of the Damned, and it is called, I always forget it, Dominus? I always want to say Dominus, but I know that sounds too much like Indominus, and I don't, oh, it is Dominus. The Dominus discipline from Ritual of the Damned, only our characters can take that. So it is common practice amongst Grey Knights players to take as many characters as possible so you can have access to as many of the Dominus discipline powers as you can. That isn't quite as tenable in a 1,000-point list, and here's why. The best way to take characters is to bring a battalion, because it allows you more HQ slots, and then you can just fill up your elites with apothecaries and paladin ancients and things like that. But primarily it allows you to take more HQ slots, 3 in a battalion. Most other detachments only allow you to take 2, aside from brigade, but no one's ever bringing a brigade in Grey Knights. I don't even know if that's possible. It probably is with some bare bones units, but that's a whole other discussion. However, you're not going to be bringing a battalion in 1,000-point Grey Knights list because, as previously mentioned, our troops are 38 points each. It's 190 points for a squad of 5 Terminators. So when you bring the minimum number of troops for a battalion, 3 squads, you're spending just shy of 600 points on just the troop requirements for the 1,000-point list. And then you have 400 points to fill characters, vehicles, and any specialist units that you want. So even though you're have more slots for taking characters, you aren't going to be able to fill them with characters. Because Samandas here is about 135 points, I think, at the moment. So him, maybe throw a Grandmaster Dread Knight in there, maybe throw a Librarian. Oops! List is full at that point. Now I have 3 characters with 3 squads of Terminators, which isn't a bad list, but how are you going to deal with armor at that point? How are you going to deal with tanks? How are you going to deal with other characters aside from throwing your own characters at them? Then your characters die, and then you lose a significant portion of your army. So, I strongly recommend in a 1,000-point list taking a patrol detachment. I want to recommend taking like a Vanguard detachment or an Outrider. Not an Outrider. What's the heavy one? Not heavy support. Oh my god. Spearhead! That's what it's called. A Spearhead detachment. Sometimes I want to take a Spearhead detachment because I like Land Raiders and I like Dread Knights. But if you take a Spearhead or an Outrider or a Vanguard detachment, and Vanguard is extremely appealing because we have so many good elites choices. But if you want to take one of those, you're getting -2 CP for it. Because for whatever reason, your Warlord being in one of those detachments doesn't refund the CP cost from the detachment. So in an Incursion game, you only start out with 6 command points. So if you have 1 Vanguard detachment, you are starting out with 4 command points, which is not great. So a patrol is the way you want to go in a 1,000-point game. It does only allow you 2 elite slots, but you can supplement that with a couple of things, and I'll explain what that is. But what it does do is allow you to minimize the number of troops you had. You can take more troops if you want, but you only have to take 1. And it is good to have a unit of troops for objective secured, obviously, and also just having Terminators on the board, I think, is always a good idea. In Tide of Shadows, they're incredibly well protected, and they can hold surprisingly well, even though they only have 2 wounds, and all the Terminators in this book have 3 wounds. Someday. I want our codex so bad. But yeah, so we're going to be taking a patrol with that. The next thing we want to do, obviously, we're taking 1 unit of Terminators for our troops. The next thing we want to do is figure out exactly what HQs we're bringing, because, again, it's going to add up very, very fast. I like Grandmasters on foot. People tend to shy away from them because they are... there's better options, according to some people. The Grandmaster, Nemesis Dread Knight, he's obviously tankier, he's bigger, he can take some really nice heavy weapons, but he's also a lot bigger. And the boards you're going to be playing on for a 1,000-point game are only, 30 inches by 44, I think? They're tiny. It's 2 kilting boards pushed together. So the fact that your Grandmaster is only moving on foot is only moving 5 inches, and he only has 24-inch range with his Stormbolt or 12-inch range with his Smite, it's not as detrimental as in a larger game. Even if you're foot slogging him, he can get up into the opponent's grill maybe turn 2 or turn 3, which isn't terrible. And on a lot of these smaller tables, at least the ones that I like to play, terrain is going to be very, very dense because you want to factor it. You want to be able to fit in all of the various terrain types. You want ruins, you want line of sight blocking, you want craters and stuff to hamper movement. And on a 30 by 44, that fills up very fast. So your Grandmaster on foot can actually go a lot of places the Grandmaster Nemesis Dread Knight can't. He can walk through walls. He's infantry. He can scale directly up walls and stand on a second story because he's infantry. The Nemesis Dread Knight can't. Don't get me wrong, Nemesis Grandmaster Dread Knight is a good choice. But this guy just has a lot more versatility. And honestly, he's 6 wounds. He has a 4-up invulnerable save. You give him or a squad near him Sanctuary, and he's going to be rocking a 3-up the entire time. You're probably not going to be spending... So one thing that I tend to do in the larger games where I'm just swimming in CP, I'll use Heed the Prognosticars on my Grandmaster at the beginning of my turn, which is a stratagem, costs 2 CP, and it gives him a +1 to his invulnerable save. That way I can save Sanctuary for another unit. I'm not going to do that in a game where I have 6 command points total. I'm not going to spend 2 of them to give him a 3-up invuln when I could just cast Sanctuary on him. But honestly, he's pretty survivable. Armored Resilience is also a good one to cast on him as well. Keep him in Tide of Shadows, and he's going to be really hard to take down. Which actually leads me to another point that I wanted to talk about. There are 2 competing things in 1,000-point games. I know I'm kind of mid-list building, but I do want to talk about this. There are 2 competing sort of, for me at least, modes of thought in a 1,000-point game. On the one hand, I want to be able to take ground. I want to be able to hold objectives because, as we all know, 9th edition is very much a game about objectives. I want to be able to hold ground. I want to be able to rush objectives and split off and grab multiple things. But also, in 1,000-point games, people are much less likely to spend a lot of points on bigger, destructive units, and so there's a lot less firepower coming your way. Grey Knights, you're investing a lot into what they are. And I have found in my 1,000-point games that if I really invest and I start to sort of lean in the hero hammer direction, where I just buff up some of my bigger characters, they can do work. They roll up the board and they just start wiping out troops units and even laying waste to vehicles and monsters. Samandis, real powerful in a 1,000-point game. My brother, with his admittedly renegades and heretics, but even with his 1,000 Suns, he recognizes that if Samandis goes towards an objective, Samandis is going to take that objective. It's just a matter of time. So I like to put relics, I like to put warlord traits, and I like to use all my spells and sometimes stratagems on these characters. And my goal when making a 1,000-point list is to make really strong sort of mobile fire bases almost, with a couple of infantry models and a character or 2 just pushing forward and taking everything that they want. Because, as I said, in a 1,000-point game, your opponent's not going to have a lot to resist that. And a buffed up Grey Knight can do a lot of damage. But that comes with a downside, which is the other half that I was talking about, holding points and stuff. If I have a squad of Terminators, let's say a Paladin Ancient, a Brother Captain, and my Grandmaster waltzing around, then he is... I don't have anybody else. That's all of my points in one spot. It's an indestructible little Death Star that can just push forward and take whatever it wants, but then the other half of the board is just left open to my opponent, or my deployment zone is left open to my opponent. So that's a problem, obviously. You can create a small little indestructible, nearly indestructible force that will destroy anything it touches, but then you're just leaving all your points. Grey Knights have a hard time holding ground. So what that means is I'm going to make my little mobile Death Star that's going to consist of my Grandmaster, one other character, and my squad of Terminators. They're going to go forward, they're going to push into my opponent's deployment zone, and they're going to take whatever. So I've got my Grandmaster. I've got my squad of Terminators. I've put a hammer onto the Justicar because it is... we need to crack vehicles, we need to kill opponents' characters and monsters. Everybody else has swords, which isn't the most competitive choice right now, and I understand that. And if you are genuinely looking to make a competitive list, with what we have now, no saying to what the Codex is going to say in a few months or a year, whenever it comes out, but at the moment, swords aren't your best choice. they're strength 4, and that's just not good enough to crack through a lot of armor. I like them though because they look cool, so I'm always going to choose them.
We have my Grandmaster, we have Terminators. I want another character to be able to support them. I've already decided that my Grandmaster is going to have Armored Resilience because, as we mentioned, those Dominus discipline powers are very special and only characters can take them. And I'm not going to have very many characters in this list. So I'm giving him Armored Resilience. He can use it either on himself or the Terminators if they seem like they're going to be more in danger. Armored Resilience is the spell that gives us -1 to being wounded. I've found that that's incredibly helpful. Sometimes more helpful than, what is it called? Sanctuary. Armored Resilience. What a lovely little spell. -1 to wounding is very powerful.
So, the second character that we're going to be doing, I'm always tempted to bring a Librarian. In this case, I think I'm going to lean into that. Librarian. Doesn't really matter what you outfit him with. He doesn't have a lot of attacks. He has 3 base. He's obviously going to get 1 in the charge. But, I mean, he's not going to be doing work in melee. Maybe you've got a Librarian who just tends to be lucky. And, I mean, his 2-up, 5-up for his armor save and his invulnerable save is pretty good. I don't think he needs the Stormbolter. Typically, I would run him with just the melee weapon. The Stormbolter is an additional 3 points on him, and he doesn't have to have it, so you can put that elsewhere. Who knows what you can get with that. But
we're going to add a Librarian. He's also going to have some Dominus powers. I'm going to give him Warp Shaping, because it's always handy to have around. And how about Ethereal Manipulation? Nope, not Ethereal Manipulation. Empyrean Domination. So he's going to be channeling the warp in 2 ways. He's going to be shifting us through our tides if we need to. And then he's going to be generating command points for us, which will be very useful because, again, we only have 6 command points, and Grey Knights are exceptionally hungry for command points.
At this point, we've got about, let's see, about 200 for the Terminator squad with the hammer in them. Librarian's just over 100, and the Grandmaster is about 130. So, wow, we're halfway already for our list, a little over halfway. What we'll notice here is that we really still don't have a lot of... We can hold a point with the Terminator squad, and if we're in Tide of Shadows, which is giving us, at worst, just an additional +1 to our armor, and at best, a -1 to being hit. If we're in Tide of Shadows, those Terminators are going to hold objectives pretty well. So what are we going to add on to there? Let's think about what we need. We need some way to reliably take down troops, right? Basic little, like, flak. Like, if we encounter Gene Stealers, we need to take out all their neophytes. If we encounter orcs, we need to take out boys. We got Stormbolters on the Terminators. That's going to do that job really well. We can always use more Stormbolters, though. And now we're going to do something that I usually don't advocate for, but I am going to this time. Minimum size Paladin squad. Usually I'll run a big old blob of 10 Paladins because that is exceptionally difficult to move. But a squad of 10 Paladins, bare bones, no silencers, no side cannons, no hammers, nothing. A squad of 10 Paladins is 500 points. Do you want 50% of your army to be one unit that suddenly gets tied up with a tank or something and you can't use it for the rest of the game? No. So we're going to take 3 Paladins, which is 50 points base, and we're going to throw a hammer on to the Paragon and warding staves on to the other 2. The reason we're doing the hammer is because, again, we need more necessary tank cracking, and the reason we're doing the warding staves is because it gives them a little bit of a higher save in melee, and if they're where we want them to be, that might help them a lot. A 4-up invulnerable save is better than nothing. It basically makes them mini characters.
So at this point, we've got our 2 characters. We've got the troops that they're going to be running around with, or maybe the Paladins are going to be running around with. But essentially, this force, almost we can split up and be okay with it. Perhaps the Grandmaster goes with them. Perhaps the Grandmaster goes with the Paladins just for flavor, because the Paladins are actually the bodyguards of the Grandmaster. Hezekiah is going to be staying... Hezekiah is my Librarian, by the way. He's going to be staying in the backfield, casting his powers, maybe holding an objective. Hopefully his armor will help him to be able to do that, but we might need some protection for him as well. The Terminators are going to be going forward. They want a character support, so I'm just looking at this right now. These guys are going to be going off in one corner of the board, probably hunting tanks or characters. These guys are going to be grabbing an objective that's outside of my deployment zone, and Hezekiah is going to be in my deployment zone. So I need a character to accompany them, just to be able to provide buffs or rerolls of some sort, or even just like having one exceptional fighter in there. Hezekiah needs some help in the backfield. He needs something near him, a vehicle or some troops, something to help him out. These guys are doing pretty okay. I think this little force right here would be pretty powerful. Give them Sanctuary, give him Armored Resilience. He's going to be casting Armored Resilience on the Paladins. Paladins are going to cast Sanctuary, perhaps on themselves, perhaps on Samandus, depending on how the whole situation goes. But Paladins with Sanctuary, with Warding Staves, and with Armored Resilience, and then you use the, what is it called? It is called Redoubtable Defense to reduce damage to them by 1 in the shooting phase. They are exceptionally hard to shift, even in the unit of 3. So they're going to be able to go forward and pretty much kill anything they touch. But how many points is this, really, when you think about it? We're at about 620, 630 points. Obviously, if I'm actually building a list, I'm going to put this on the Battlescribe and see, but this is just me eyeballing it at the moment. But I do notice I have sort of 3 separate separate little groups here that I'm going to be working with.
So a little over 600 points. My Librarian needs somebody. Who's he going to have? A nice little bodyguard of, you know what he wants? He wants a Dreadnought. Venerable Dreadnought. Bare bones, nothing fancy. You know what's going to be happening with our Librarian in the backfield? Troops are going to come and try to take the objective in our deployment zone. And most troops, if you're not looking at Space Marines, most troops, at least that I'm going to be facing in my local meta, are going to be T3. So an Assault Cannon is going to do work on them. It'll hopefully tear them apart. I'm going to take this Venerable Dreadnought and I'm going to plump it next to my Librarian. It'll give him Look Out, Sir, which is great. And it'll also provide some fire support if he needs it. The Assault Cannon is only 24 inches, which for me in most cases is an immediate turnoff for something that I'm going to be holding in the backfield. But if you recall, the battlefield is tiny. So an Assault Cannon is going to be able to hit most anything that is making its way to even like mid-battlefield. So the Dreadnought hanging out back there, I'm probably going to give him Astral Aim so that he can rip through walls with his Assault Cannon. Again, the Assault Cannon is appealing to me because the Assault Cannon is the default. You don't have to pay more points for it. The Multi-Melta and the Twin Las, while both good and both good at tank cracking, are going to be more expensive, obviously. And if I'm honest, whenever I bring a Twin Las cannon, I miss half or 3/4 of the shots anyway, or they don't wound, or they make an invulnerable save when I use it. So I'd rather just have a spray of fire from an Assault Cannon. But yeah, so I'm plumping him back there. He's about 150 points, and so we're looking up at, this time, at maybe almost 800 points. I'll add this all up in a minute just to be sure, but again, I'm eyeballing it. So I need a character to march around with my Terminators. Let's think about that. So I have 2 options. I'm looking at my Paladin Ancient, give them all extra attacks, and I'm looking at my Apothecary, who can maybe pick some of them up because he has old, bad Apothecary rules. But he also has a hammer. However, the issue that we're running into now, and this is one of the issues with the patrol, I already have 2 elite slots full. And if I recall, yep, there it is. A patrol detachment can only have 2 elite slots. That's what we're running into. And I've just filled those with the Venerable Dreadnought and a Paladin squad. So, instead, what we're going to do is look at our Dreadnought, recognize that he's so cool, but frankly, compared to what the Space Marine Dreadnoughts are like, where they're always reducing damage by 1 in the Space Marines Codex, it's almost a detriment bringing him. So instead, we're going to save a few points and bring us a Razorback. We are sacrificing melee potential, obviously, and he's not a Psyker, so we're not going to get that additional power, but he has twice the Assault Cannons to deal with the troops. So our Razorback is going to be holding back with our Librarian in our back lines, while the Librarian is casting powers, getting us more command points, shifting us through Tides of the Warp, and being protected by the Razorback with the Assault Cannons. It also saves us a few points. Maybe that's a good call. But primarily what it does do, it opens up the elite slot, for either the Apothecary or the Paladin Ancient. The Paladin Ancient, it's tricky. If you bring him just bare bones, he sucks, because his weird aura that allows him to give people additional attacks in melee is only models within 6 inches, unlike most every other unit in the game, where it is units within 6 inches. So he's really got to stay buried in this Terminator squad here. Alternatively, if I give him my Relic, then I'll be giving him the Banner of Refining Flame, and oh boy, he just straight deals d6 mortal wounds, which is going to cut through anything. That's a good troop killer. It's a good armor cracker. You know what? We're going to do that. We're going to give him the Banner of Refining Flame, so he has a d6 smite, and that'll help him out. So they'll have a little bit of a psychic battery with them. That's the words I'm looking for, I guess. All right, let's see what we've got so far.
All right, just with this, we're looking at 836 points. This is not a lot of models for 836 points. So that leaves us, what is that, 164 points to fill, which is difficult in a Grey Knights list, because most of our units are more expensive than that, or they're elites. Like, we could fit the Dreadnought in here, but we've already got a few elites choices in here, and so we can't anymore. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw in one Nemesis Dreadnought. He is 160 points with the sword and the silencer, so that's bringing us to a clean 996, I think. Yeah, that sounds right. His role in this is going to be to sort of figure out what I need him to do. These guys are going to be marching forward, taking objective. These guys are going to be marching into enemy lines to try to slay. These guys are going to hold our deployment zone. This guy's going to go wherever he needs to. One of these three, like, I guess, forces is going to get overwhelmed at some point and going to need backup of some sort. So, Dreadnight's going to come in, and I'm going to deploy him maybe in the middle of the battlefield. I don't quite have the points to give him a teleporter, which is unfortunate, but he's going to be reinforcing whoever needs it. So, there are a couple things to consider here.
Losses are going to be, like, catastrophic in this list. You lose a few Terminators, and you're losing a lot. You lose your Paladin squad, and that's one of the biggest hitters we have. So I recommend a couple of things. Warlord trait, obviously, is going to be first to the fray, because it always is, because it's the only good Grey Knights Warlord trait. Putting that on my Grandmaster so that the Paladins and himself, they're going to be going up trying to kill as much as they can, and just start wreaking havoc. My Grandmaster, Samandus, he always has a Force Sword. I'm personally going to spend a command point to turn his Force Sword into the Blade of the Forsworn, which is from this book, with the dumb Dark Angel loser on the front. It basically turns his sword into a better halberd, strength 5, AP 3, straight 3 damage. If he happens to be facing demons, then he ignores their vulnerable save, which is great. But it's basically just giving him an upgrade. Strength 5, AP 3, 3 damage is good, and he's going to need it if his plan is to run up and start killing. As I mentioned, the other relic is going to be here, the Banner of Refining Flame, to deal more wounds with Smite. So we're already dropping down to 5 command points before the battle even starts. Fortunately, as you remember, our Librarian, he has Imperium Domination, so hopefully he's going to be casting that successfully every turn and being able to bring us command points back. There's an argument to be made to put the Sanctic Shard on the Librarian instead of one of my offensive relics. I think that might be wise. But every time I use the Sanctic Shard, I end up not needing it. Just, that's how the dice roll. I end up rolling really high anyway, and then I just feel silly that I brought it. I would personally, in a small game like this, where it's going to be essential to kill the opponent's forces before they can do damage to me, I'm going to start. I want the smacky relics. I want the things that can just bring down my opponents really quick. So I'm going to be bringing the Blade of the Forsworn and the Banner of Refining Flame, and just trust that my Librarian, with his innate +1, is going to be casting the spells he needs just fine. Aside from that, as far as psychic powers go, I already mentioned the Paladins are going to be having Sanctuary because they're going to be casting it on themselves or the Grandmaster, whoever seems more in danger. My Grandmaster is going to have Armored Resilience, and same story. He's going to be casting it on himself or the Paladins, depending on who's ever in danger more. Because again, they're going to be running around killing. Librarian, we've already established him. My Terminators, there's a couple of options here. Normally, I give Terminators Gate of Infinity, which is a great power. I love Gate of Infinity so much. However, in a small game, a 1,000-point game, you're playing on a small board, and Gate of Infinity requires you to be 9 inches away when you jump in, and it is very, very likely that your opponent just simply will not leave you any space to deep strike in a place you want to, and you'll either have to put them in a weird spot or just not be able to use that power. So I'm going to give them Vortex of Doom, because that's going to be, Vortex of Doom is going to hopefully deal a couple of extra mortal wounds. And again, these guys are going to go forward to clear points and stand on points. He obviously has Banner of Refining Flame. I am going to give him Sanctuary as a backup power. He's probably not going to be casting it, but if I need to, I can always use Mental Focus, which is a stratagem from the Codex that allows me to cast a second power, unless I'm thinking of Mental Focus. Yes, it allows me to cast a second power. So maybe he can cast Sanctuary if the Paladins die for whatever reason, and I still want to make sure I can get a 4-up invuln somewhere, or a 3-up invuln on a character. And last but not least, my Dread Knight here is going to have Astral Aim. He's either going to be casting it on himself, because his Gatling Silencer has 12 shots, and he might be able to get lucky with that, or he's going to be casting it on the Razorback, so that its assault cannons can hit whatever it feels like. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. This is a very tight list. Everything's going to have to go well in order for it to do well. But all of that hinges on one thing: staying in Tide of Shadows. I am the biggest proponent of Tide of Shadows there is. If somebody came to me and said, you can stay in one tide forever and you're never allowed to switch, I would say Tide of Shadows in a heartbeat. And a big part of that is I don't play MSU of strike squads. If I just had a lot more units, maybe I'd like Tide of Escalation with the smite bonuses. But for the way that I play the game, Tide of Shadows is exactly what I want. And in a small game like this, where all of my losses are going to hurt, Tide of Shadows is going to keep me alive much longer. It even works on my Dread Knight because it's a Psyker. It won't work on the Razorback, which sucks, but everybody else is going to always be getting that +1 save. And since they're all Terminators, basically a 1-up save. So it's going to protect them indefinitely from -1 AP. And if we're in ruins, or not even just in ruins, in any terrain feature, which again, small board, going to be cramped, it's very likely they're going to have -1 being hit. The goal here is to keep your guys alive and do as much damage as you can. Surprise, Warhammer. But yeah, that's my thought process when I go through and make a 1,000-point list. It's not super complicated. Keep your guys alive, take points, kill as much as you can in the meantime. Yeah, in the future, this video might be super out of date because, soon enough we're going to get a Munitorum field manual update, and that's going to change all of our points, so maybe some of this just is entirely irrelevant. And hopefully, very shortly down the line, we're going to get a new codex. I'm hopeful about it. If that's the case, I'll remake this video. And I'm going to remake a lot of my videos because we're going to have a lot of fun new information. But yeah, I strongly encourage people to play Incursion games. They're really fun. Again, they don't sap your energy as much as the big 2,000-point games. And something feels chummy about them. I don't know how to explain it, but something just feels like fun and simpler about it. But not too simple in the way that Kill Team does it. I don't know. I really like them. I strongly suggest you build a 1,000-point list and try it out. Maybe it'll be the new jam that you have. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful in some way. If you did like this, maybe give me a like and a subscribe. Ha ha, YouTube platitudes. That always helps. But yeah, I'll see you guys next week for another battle report.